Coming up on Need to Know, a report card was released this week, and the grades given out reflect more than just the work of students. We'll discuss why these grades matter to our community and what's in the pipeline to help change the trajectory for Rochester kids. Also on the show, how do you teach Trump, Clinton, vote-rigging accusations, and more in higher ed? Local college students are weighing in and speaking out about election 2016 in class and in our studio. That's just ahead. And we're going inside the newsroom here at WXXI, where a special new radio collaboration will explore pocketbook issues for upstate residents. Stay with us. Need to Know starts right now. A new report card is revealing the current state of Rochester's kids. Everything from prenatal care and pre-K enrollment to high school graduation and college readiness were tracked. The report was put out by Rock the Future, which has been working to improve outcomes for Rochester children. It turns out the grades given out also reflect our role as a community in helping kids progress from cradle to career. So what do the grades mean, and where do we go from here? Joining me in the studio to answer that question is Jackie Campbell, Alliance Director for Rock the Future, Jennifer Leonard, President and CEO of the Rochester Area Community Foundation, and Dirk Hightower, Executive Director for the Children's Institute. Welcome to all of you, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So I want to make sure that our viewers have a solid understanding in terms of Rock the Future and what this group means, what it's doing for children and families, and I should say an alliance rather. So Jackie, I'm going to give that one to you. Break it down in a nice soundbite about Rock the Future.
Well, what we like to start with is what Rock the Future is not. So it's not a program and it's not an organization, but it is a collaborative effort of the community to come together to do what works best for kids.
So based on the new report card out this week by this alliance, there is progress to report when it comes to how kids are doing in our community. The group, Rock the Future, the alliance rather, has been around for 5 years, and I want to note some things from this report for our viewers. Chronic absences in the city's school system are down from 37% to 28%, as for students in kindergarten through 3rd grade, and the number of 3-year-olds enrolled in pre-K or Head Start has jumped from 23% to 42%. So what do these particular modest gains tell us, and what's the story behind them? Jennifer?
Well, the chronic absence story is an amazing result of the district reaching out to the community, including the county and social service agencies through United Way, to have everybody agree that reducing chronic absence was important, agree to measure and be driven by the data, innovate and use effective practices and spread them and measure again. And so you're seeing the result of that, which is Rock the Future's technique. But in the absence area, it started with 13, now 12 target schools in the elementary area, trying to identify kids who were gone 10 or even 20% of the time, and then going out once a month to their homes in an attendance blitz to connect those families with absent kids to resources in the community. The county has made sure that some of its services are available to those families. Big Brothers Big Sisters provides mentors. It's been a full court press. Our staff at the Community Foundation even donated jewelry for a special Mother's Day program. Kids who were present more got to select something for their moms or grandmoms or guardians.
Are there any areas we see the progress in terms of things where we have not seen much change? Are there anything in particular that you would say surprises you and you would think that at this point more progress would have been made? Dirk?
There's a couple areas. One area that we have been planning for, and it ties into your earlier question, is for providing more services for 3-year-olds. That's really been over the last 5 years, we've noticed that, well, we can provide great programming for 4-year-olds, that even after they gain 1.5 years to 2 years during the school year, they're still not ready for kindergarten. And so there's been a big push by the community to get 3-year-olds more involved, both for having them come to program as well as getting parents involved with screening and efforts like that. So we're not seeing a great deal of children gain as much as we would like so that they're kindergarten ready. Right now we're at about 54% of the kids are kindergarten ready before summer, and we also know that many children lose a significant amount of learning or material over the summer, 10 to 20%. So by adding a summer program, we're starting to see kids go up to 76% of our kids are now ready for kindergarten. So it's not moving as fast in that area, but we've been planning and working on it. And I think systems change, if you will, takes time. And that's what we're realizing for those of us that like things to happen quickly, at least in a community like Rochester and communities across the country, it doesn't happen as fast. But early childhood was starting to make a difference. We're starting to make changes, but it's not as quick as I think many of us would have liked to have seen.
So I know early childhood has been a major focus for Rock the Future. And when we look at the report card, we see where things seem to be in a standstill with the high school students in particular. Is there something that has not been tried in the past that partners involved with this effort are working on to really better engage those disengaged high school students?
Well, for the students who are planning to go to college, right? Some of our effort has focused on helping them to apply early for financial aid, because the evidence shows that those who apply early and receive financial aid persist longer in college. So we've been working in that arena. But I think that the other piece that we are focused on, and Jennifer mentioned it, is like looking at the data and disaggregating it and really focusing on what is happening with our young folks. And so this year, the report actually did that in a greater way. And so we're able to look at different targeted groups and discuss differentiated approaches for them to succeed. So
what are some of those? I know we hear about that, but maybe we don't, viewers and myself don't have a solid understanding in terms of what some of those approaches might be.
Well, for one thing, how many students of color are actually participating in advanced or AP courses, and how many of them are on track for Regents graduation, Regents diplomas? So looking at the specific groups, and then really just understanding in the community what those actually mean. So one of the areas that we lifted up this year was the improvement for black males, their high school graduation rate, which had been reported to be 9%, which was not accurate, and that is now 47%, which is almost double where it was a few years ago. So really looking deep at the data to see how can we scale up some of those practices that have been shown to work specifically for targeted groups, but putting attention where we need to put attention on different groups.
I want to stay with high school for just a minute and kind of connect it with community collaboration. The Children's Agenda, according to them, they released this, less than 7,000 after-school spots are open for more than 20,000 K-8 students in the city school district. High school after-school programs weren't mentioned in the report card. But studies have been done that have found that there's this correlation between after-school activities for high school students, including higher class attendance, lower course failures, and higher graduation rates. So I'm linking this to the community because I want to know, is there something? I think I talk to people a lot when I'm out and about, and they feel as though, what can I do, and how can my organization, how can my nonprofit be a part of this? Is this an area after school, maybe other areas where there's still this gap with the community that they could do something?
Well, the one thing that I would point to in terms of high school students and what happens after school, that many of our students participate in extracurricular activities such as sports, and some of them have jobs. But where we really want to focus some of our attention is what can the business community do to support our kids after school in terms of providing jobs? Because we know that our young people develop critical skills that they take into adulthood by having those opportunities. So there is, there's room at the table for everybody to participate. But also, some of those students do participate in those after-school programs. In terms of the report, it was identifying what we could count.
Got it. So what do the grades tell us? What does this report card tell us about the community and our role, what we're doing? What type of reflection is that upon us?
We've been able to increase volunteers to help students with attendance, to work with students and families on filling out their federal financial aid forms. And we've also been able to engage many more organizations in supporting important evidence-based programs like summer learning. We are now up to 1,100 seats for city school students in high-quality summer learning programs outside what the school district already offers. And those are at Brockport, at the Warner School at the University of Rochester, at the Harley School where it originated, Allendale, Columbia. The fact is there's 16 organizations helping raise money to bring kids from the city onto campus in the summer, and kids who go to at least 3 of those summer programs are 90% likely to graduate from high school, and 75% of them go to college. So that's community support.
All right,
I think the other thing in community support that really, I'll speak to it a little bit, but it's really Jackie's effort, and that is working with parents, of really finding out and how best to engage parents, because I think as a community we have not done that well, and there's lots of opportunities in that area.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, the work continues, the challenges remain, but it's really very important to hear about the progress and the strides that have been made as well. So a special thank you to my guests for joining me today. And you can get involved with Rock the Future. Just go to rockthefuture.org and you can directly connect with Jackie Campbell and her team to learn how. It's a pretty fair bet that election 2016 has given college classrooms a lot to talk about. We've discussed on Need to Know, millennials are a coveted voting bloc. But to get anyone to show up to the polls on November 8th means they need to have some type of interest in the election, whether pleased or unimpressed with the candidates. Engaging millennials in the election process has been a focus for an area professor whose students will host a public policy forum open to the community just before Election Day. Joining me in the studio to talk Clinton, Trump, and much more is Wes Renfro, Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Political Science and Legal Studies at St. John Fisher College, and Fisher students Camille Pensabene and Gabriella Kilbasinski. Welcome to the show. So, Wes, I have to start with you because I'm curious, did you ever imagine that an election cycle like the one we're experiencing would be in place as you're preparing your courses for spring and fall of 2016?
No. It's atypical. I love teaching during the election year. There's high student interest. There's always a lot to talk about. This time there's been much more than normal to talk about. It's been a really great experience.
In terms of student engagement, do you feel as though the conversations are a lot more enthusiastic this election year than in years past?
So I think that people like talking about sort of the horse race coverage.
Yeah.
I think that there's decreased enthusiasm for the candidates themselves.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been really hard in terms of teaching is that normally we have a lot of give and take with liberal students advocating and conservative students advocating. And the thing that has struck me the most this cycle is that there are very few students who are willing, at least in public, to advocate for Donald Trump.
I remember when I was a college student, it was during the big Gore and Bush election, which proved to be very newsworthy post-election day. That was the very first time I had ever heard about accusations of vote rigging. But I want to know, for both of you, what does this election mean for you as students?
I think as students, this election is really important for most of us. I know for myself, at least, it's the first election I get to vote in. It's really exciting for me. And I think for me, this election means taking a really strong look at both candidates, trying not to get swept up in that horse race coverage, trying not to get swept up in the media, and really looking at what matters, policy, you know, what's of substance. I think that there has been a lot of almost Hollywood-like coverage of this election just because of the nature of the candidates and Donald Trump. And I just want to make sure what's important to me in this election is we focus on what matters, and that's where the candidate stands on issues. And obviously their character is a huge part of that too, but just not to get swept up in that Hollywood-like media coverage.
What about for you, Camille?
I agree with everything that Gabby said. I think it's, for me, it's also my first election voting, so that's really exciting. But then I think it's also important to acknowledge that whether or not you like her, it's exciting that there is a woman candidate that there is the potential to vote for. So whether or not she wins, whether or not you like her, it's history in itself that she can be elected and that we have that opportunity to vote for a woman.
Yeah. Attracting the millennial vote, it's been a very, very big topic this election year. We talked about it quite a bit on the show. And I want to know, do you think that there's anything more to it besides the fact that your group makes up about on average 31% of the electorate? Or do you think it's something more than that? Do you think that the candidates are engaging you in particular and your wants and your needs and the changes that you want to see?
Something that we've talked a lot about in class is that millennials are often underrepresented just for a lot of reasons, whether or not they don't get out to vote, whether they're not informed enough to vote, or whether because we're at college we don't always get the absentee ballots. So I think it's important that we are having these conversations at college and that we're getting millennials more involved because we are such a big part of the electorate.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with everything Camille just said, and just to add that I do think that some candidates are certainly doing a better job than others appealing to the millennials. Specifically, I think Hillary Clinton is doing a better job than Donald Trump when she discusses, college and the cost of college and certainly student debt, which is a big topic, I know in my mind at least. I think that she's doing a much better job of reaching out and talking about issues that matter and are relevant to millennials versus Donald Trump. I don't see that same attention to detail from. So I would just say that the Republican Party for a long time has been trying to reach out to younger voters. That was something in the past they had said was a real priority. But in practice, I definitely see more Democratic and left-leaning groups touching upon issues that matter more to millennials. Versus Republicans, I would say maybe they have a higher concentration on issues that matter to elderly or like the senior population.
And some would say Hillary Clinton can thank Bernie Sanders for that, who had a lot of the millennial support.
Yeah.
So Wes, how do you teach the election, considering I would imagine there are challenges considering how contentious this election is between these candidates?
Yeah, it's actually been a little bit less contentious than I thought because I think the students are tilting towards Clinton in general. But I do have this sense sometimes that you need to be sensitive to folks who are maybe not of that mindset. And I think it's quite similar to the media in some respects, right? I have to be an arbitrator in the classroom and not engage in advocacy teaching. That's not who we are. Yeah. So I think in my class in particular, we do a lot with data. We talk about polling. We talk about the institution of the presidency. We give historical examples. And, I'm an empiricist, and so the line of the students is always follow the data.
Got it. Well, we popped in your class earlier this week, and you were talking about the data as well. And I have a clip that I want to show our viewers just so they can hear a little bit about the reaction between the students and you. And Gabby, you make an appearance, so viewers will get to see you as well. So we'll take a look at this.
What are the two different ways in which he's saying rigged?
He's talked a lot about the media rigging it, the media being biased towards Hillary Clinton, but he's also recently, like Kellyanne Conway has come out and talked a lot about voter fraud with dead people still being on the registration, and that's been a really big issue according to his campaign.
Recently, there has been this suggestion that, that the polls themselves are rigged or that they're somehow not honest. Does anybody want to just comment on how difficult it would be to fix all those polls?
It's incredibly difficult. As far as we're concerned, I'm pretty sure, after the studies have been done about voter fraud and fraud in the elections, it's only a case of about 0.1% of votes are actually fraudulent. And I mean, besides the point, everyone has enough issues going up to vote once as it is, and it would have to be, you'd have to put a lot of effort into voting again and again and again.
So I understand that class begins each week with this open dialogue about whatever issues are going on at that present time with the campaign. I want to know, Camille, I'm going to give this to you. Have you learned anything from your professors or your peers that have made you rethink the election process, that it might be maybe swayed your vote, or kind of given you pause with the political process in general?
Yeah, so I'm actually an education major, so taking this class has been really eye-opening for me. I really didn't know that much about elections and the presidency in general, so for me this was a really big learning experience. I knew that the Electoral College existed, but I didn't really know exactly how it worked. And also we have two professors, so we have Dr. Renfro, but we also have Dr. Donovan in our class. So getting both their perspectives on both the polling and the institution of the presidency has been really awesome. I've really learned a lot about it.
Well, you have been working with your students as your professor, your colleague that you're working with, on this special public policy forum that will take place on November 3rd. It's open to the public, which will be great. And you've been breaking down policy proposals supported by the candidates Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So how are you specifically preparing your students? Because we hear often there's just not enough detailed information when it comes to their policy proposals.
So we've divided the class into 3 groups, and they're going to tackle immigration, jobs, and terrorism. And they had to look at the candidate statements, both on their websites and then things that are attributed to them, and then also really find out what experts on those topics have had to say. We're asking them to think about the assumptions that are built into policies and things like unintended consequences. And I think that the students are doing pretty well, but most of them are also beginning to realize that crafting public policy is very difficult.
Are there any challenges that you hope to address through this forum when it comes to the public, when it comes to these specific policy proposals that you'll be bringing up?
One thing I would really hope that the public would be encouraged to do from this forum is be a little bit skeptical of promises made in policies. I think oftentimes we see candidates promising things, even though they're promised with good intentions, that's really not in their power to necessarily fulfill those promises. So even if they're great ideas, they might find themselves unable to actually have those things come to fruition. My topic is immigration, so obviously there are some very strong policy stances in this election. I'm thinking specifically about Donald Trump with the wall, and a part of his plan to make Mexico pay for the wall is raising the price of visa fees. Now that's something that, you know, would have to go to Congress and go through that. So be skeptical that, you know, the president is not the be-all say-all for policy. It goes through a lot of legislative channels, so just to think bigger picture.
It's a good point you bring up. I often want to do a show on that. Like, you know, the candidates say one thing, but let's circle back and see how many things have they been able to check off that list based on the promises that they're making, in particular when it comes to local elections. Well, we have to wrap for now, but I want to make sure that viewers have the information for the Public Policy Forum being hosted by Professor Renfro and his colleague and his students. It is open to the Rochester community, and it is sure to be an interesting event. It's happening on Thursday, November 3rd from 4 to 6 p.m. in the mid-level of the Golisano Gateway. That's at St. John Fisher College. Be sure to check it out. And now we're going inside the newsroom. This is an ongoing series here on Need to Know. Throughout the year, a WXXI host, reporter, or producer joins us to give us a sneak peek of an upcoming project or the backstory behind their latest report. Today, we'll hear from Denise Young, executive editor of the local Journalism Collaborative in our newsroom, and Sasha Ann Simons, WXXI news reporter and the new host of Arts in Focus. And it's good to have both of you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Denise, I really like the approach of this project. So you're bringing together voices of journalists and residents and Buffalo, Oswego, Binghamton, including Rochester, that being Sasha.
Right.
And I want to know the concept. Explain the story behind this series.
Okay, well, just first off, we have a really strong history with these stations. We've worked on a lot of stuff together before, but we wanted to tell a story through the voices of real New Yorkers, upstate New Yorkers. We do a lot of election coverage, but it's usually politicians or officials of some sort. We wanted to tell this story through the voices of upstate residents and voters from each of those communities. And so each reporter went out and reported their stories, and we got voices from each region to include in each story. So it was kind of an experiment, but I think it worked out.
So in terms of the topics that are being covered, how is that divvied out amongst the different reporters in the stations?
Well, the news directors and I spoke about which topics we wanted to focus on, and we all agreed that we wanted to really focus on pocketbook issues. These are issues that really affect every New Yorker. Money's tight for everybody, right? So we wanted to focus on these topics. And different stations have different levels of expertise in each of those areas, and we divided them up as we thought would be the best way to do it.
And so, Sasha, you got definitely the hot topic of taxes.
Yes,
and I'm sure that we can all learn a lot from you. This is an arena where a lot of people feel frustrated, you know, considering that we've got some of the highest tax rates in this state. So what did you discover when you spoke to Rochester residents, and do any feel disenfranchised by taxes?
So, yes, you know, I spoke to Rochester residents. One of the first things I did was I crowdsourced on Facebook. I was like, okay, let me talk to people that I know and you know, people that they know, and right off the bat, you know, I'm asking, what do you guys think of taxes? And the first answer, oh, they're too high. That's what everyone says. They're too high. It's too much. It's I can't afford it. I can't believe it. I want to move out of state. Or people responding and saying, you know what, taxes are what made me leave New York. You know, I'm now in Texas. But one of the very surprising things that happened throughout this process, though I spoke to a lot of people who want to see a change, want to see the burden lessened, I actually surprisingly met quite a few people who were like, you know what, I've moved from here to here and in New York, and my costs have gone up, my property tax bill has gone up, but you know what? There's not really much I would change to lower the burden. I like the services that I get, and so there was a lot of that.
I was just going to ask, did you come across anybody who said, "Listen, this is my duty. I don't mind doing it,"
Yeah.
and if they explain why? So
one of the main characters in the piece that listeners will hear next week, that's her stance is, you know what, it's my civic duty. She lives in the Park Ave area where obviously she's paying a lot. She's also a business owner, but she says, you know what, this is what we have to pay. I run at 5 a.m. and when I go out, my streets are clear, and I'm not going to give up stuff like that.
So you had people weigh in, though, from outside of Rochester as well. So I'm curious to know, did any viewpoints from Rochesterians differ, or do they overlap when it comes to that general overall feeling about taxes?
I find that Rochesterians were very much, for the most part, too high. I can't take this. This is nuts. I found that people who were more open to the idea of paying more money were outside. So people in parts of Buffalo. But I found that the further east or south that you got in the state, people were just like, no, this is ridiculous. We're paying for stuff happening in New York City. This is too costly.
So Denise, when engaging diverse perspectives, because a number of topics were covered, you're overseeing this entire project. Were you able to identify some of these stark contrasts, but also similarities outside of the taxes issue?
You know, it's funny, the voices that came from each of the stations, and there were a lot. We collected a lot of interviews for the series. And there was a lot of overlap. Upstate New Yorkers are concerned about these issues. And there were a lot of similar sentiments
Give us a breakdown of the issues that listeners will get to hear about.
Okay, well, taxes, as you've heard.
Yep.
Also stories on minimum wage, job creation, and
healthcare
costs.
Wow.
Yes,
so
thank
that's
you.
definitely a big one, especially
Yes.
this election season.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, looking forward to this. So be sure to check out this collaborative radio series. It is kicking off next week. All of the stories from around the state will be available on our website as the series rolls out starting on Monday. So you can check it out online. Just go to WXXInews.org. And that is it for this edition of Need to Know, Rochester's News Magazine. I'm your host, Helene Bianduti-Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight and throughout the weekend here on WXXI TV and online. I will see you next week.